Hello to everyone out there in Blount County and beyond. I hope you are continuing to be safe and healthy and well. On this Veterans Day, I would like to extend especially warm greetings to our veterans and to those who have served in the past and who are serving now, and as well as your families who serve right there along with you. We are happy to have you with us today. My name is Melinda, and I'm a reference librarian here at the Blount County Public Library, and I welcome you to Storytime for Grown-Ups. As you may know, usually the stories that we read are fiction, but as you know, often the best stories are true stories, and very often those are the stories that involve people that we know, our local friends and neighbors. And from my experience of listening to stories, I have discovered that very often the most inspiring stories are those of our veterans living here among us in Blount County. So today I thought that we would focus on a couple of stories of Blount County military heroes from the past, just take a little bit of a glimpse into their lives. As you know, the holiday that we now celebrate as Veterans Day actually began as Armistice Day. That was the day in 1918 on which at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the World War I came to a close. Combatants laid down their arms, and the war to end all wars was finally drawing to a close. And at that time, the world just burst into joyous celebration, and here in Blount County, that was no exception. In his column following the 80th anniversary of the first Armistice Day, longtime editor of the Daily Times, the late Dean Stone, shared recollections from Grace MacArthur, a beloved member of our community. In his column, he quotes Grace as saying, "At 3 o'clock in the morning, news of the armistice came to Blount County. We heard the Maryville fire whistle, gunfire from all directions, and the Maryville College bell rang continuously. I remember my father so excited, building a fire, talking on the phone. Many started walking to town to celebrate while it was still dark." She said, "We went in our buggy past the courthouse coming onto Depot Street, now Ellis Avenue. We stopped to follow long rows of aluminum workers turning onto College Street to take their place in the parade. Leaving our horse and buggy at the livery stable, operated by the father of the late Adele McKenzie, we walked with so many in front of New Providence Presbyterian Church to the Maryville Post Office." And the citizens of Blount County had good reason to rejoice at the news of the armistice. They had certainly sent their fair share of sons and husbands and brothers and fathers to fight in the faraway war. And among these was Captain Emerson J. Lonis. Captain Lonis had served in the Army from 1901 to 1907, and later as a civilian had organized Company B of the 3rd Infantry of Tennessee. When called for service against the Germans, Lonis and his men volunteered and soon were on their way to Europe. On July 28, 1918, he wrote this letter home, which was printed in the Maryville Enterprise. It has the headline, "Let's keep up a mighty praying. Boys in trenches feel safe when they know we think of them." And it is from somewhere in France, July 28, 1918. "Dear ones at home, I have just returned to rest camp from an 8-day tour in the front line, and now know what it means to be in battle. B Company was fortunate, no casualties and all well. It's remarkable. The people of Maryville must be praying for Company B, and we appreciate it all. I've had no sleep for 8 nights, for I was responsible for the safety of 500 yards of the Great War lines. And I want you to know there is no rest with that in front of you, and shell and shot pounding on your dugout. Wish I could tell you all, but I can't. From all reports, everything is looking better for the Allies. Pray for us continually. It seems to almost be a miracle that I did not have any casualties in my company, and I'm so glad, for I love all of them. I have just finished a good bath and meal, and I'm going to bed and sleep. I I will write you all again in a few days. Love to all, and write me often. Your loving son, Captain E.J. Lonis, Company B, 117th Infantry, AEF. Another of Blount County's native sons to serve in the war was First Lieutenant Milton L. Harper, who was the son of A.K. Harper, the former mayor of Maryville. The Maryville Enterprise describes his career and includes one of his letters also. As they say, Lieutenant M.L. Harper attended the first officers training camp in Fort Oglethorpe and was graduated as a first lieutenant. Immediately after, he was offered a captaincy, but refused, for he coveted the position of battalion adjutant, and that carried with it the rank of first lieutenant. His ability in executive matters and looking after the reports of the office was so marked that he became invaluable, and his superiors in rank found it difficult to keep him because of demands from other sources. When he finally became adjutant, he felt he had acquired the work that he wanted. His careful application to details made him a valuable aid to the battalion commander. Not content with doing his work, which was very heavy, he sought opportunities to extend a hand to others and became loved and respected because of his kindly disposition. This interest in others did not extend only to his equals and superiors in rank. On occasions when the enlisted men were under physical strain, he was known to lend a hand, taking their burden and carrying it while the other rested. And they include a letter from Milton Harper. It begins, on active service, October 3rd, 1918. My dear mother, well, I came out of the show with only one little scratch, and believe me, I certainly was in several close places. And at one time I was a prisoner captured, good and strong, by 3 German officers and several men. And believe me, the best $26 I ever spent in my life was when I bought that pistol in Knoxville. Well, here goes my tale. We were putting on a show, and when the curtain went up, the first act was great, and in the second act there was a heavy fog, and no one could see where we were going, and about 10 of us got lost. And in our wandering, we got into Fritz's trench before any of our troops did. And from nowhere came about 12 squareheads and covered us with their rifles, and there was nothing left but to put our hands up. So up they went, and they seemed so surprised to see us, we had quite a little talk. And of course, I always would argue with the devil, so I started to arguing with them, and they took all our guns except the one I bought in Knoxville, which I had hid in my gas mask. During the argument, 2 of them got pretty close to me. From that little argument, the German government was minus a colonel and a captain and a lieutenant. He goes on to describe a little more, and then, as he's bringing his letter to a close, he said, we had a few casualties, among them Emerson Lonis, and he certainly went down with his boots on and game. I don't know just how he was hit, but was with artillery, and he was in the midst of the fighting when it happened. Well, Mother, we'll write you again in a few days, for I am about tired out. Yours, Milton. Okay, Milton Harper, First Lieutenant. And sadly, that same Maryville Enterprise article also had received tragic news about First Lieutenant Harper. They say, in last week's Enterprise, we announced that an unconfirmed report was in circulation to the effect that Lieutenant Milton L. Harper, Battalion Adjutant in the 117th Infantry, had been killed in action in France. At the end of the week, letters were received from Major Hathaway, in charge of the battalion of which Lieutenant Harper was adjutant. Major Hathaway said relative to the action in which Lieutenant Harper was killed. It's dated October 10th. Major Hathaway's writing, Dear wife and children, just a word to let you know I'm still alive and able to fight. Have been fighting day and night almost for last week, with good results. Have pushed the enemy back about 12 miles since we started in the drive, and we still have them on the go. They have contested every inch of the ground and fought desperately, but they have not been able to hold us so far. My boys are fighting nobly and covering themselves with glory. My battalion captured several field guns and machine guns in last drive. About 25 field guns, I believe, were the result of the 9th and several machine guns. Our losses in killed and wounded I cannot give yet, as I do not really know. Lieutenant Milton Harper was killed on the 8th by shell fire, was standing by my side, and I was not touched, but it gave me a severe shaking up. The sad news from overseas was not entirely the end of the story for the two. Emerson J. Lonis, as you may know, was well remembered, and American Legion Post 13 has been named for him. And 3 years later, when his body was returned for burial, 3,000 to 4,000 people were there in attendance to honor him. For Milton Harper, a prominent street in Maryville was renamed to honor him. And a little over a decade later, his mother donated a beautiful lot and funds for the building of the A.K. Harper Memorial Library in memory of her husband and in honoring her two sons, including Milton. And that library eventually became the Blount County Public Library, which now seeks to collect and preserve the stories of veterans like these. Still, these losses were very deep. In spite of these losses, perhaps because they were so keenly aware of them, the citizens of Blount County were overjoyed at the news that the war had ended. And so let's return to that Armistice Day celebration. On November 14th, the Maryville Enterprise described the events of the day. Maryville's celebration of the signing of the armistice will be long remembered. From about 3 o'clock Monday morning, when the fire whistle spread the good tidings, till late into the night, the air was filled with shouting, the ringing of bells, the din of whistles, and a rapid fire of guns. Joy knew no bounds. All semblance of police authority was adjourned for the day. Guns of all kinds were brought to town, and good-natured abandon marked the actions of the throngs on the streets. With it all, however, there was no lawlessness. Noise and joy seemed synonymous, and if joy is to be measured by the noise, there was a superabundance of it. The merchants agreed to close at 10 o'clock and remain closed for the day. At 10, the street throng was augmented by the store employees and school children. From the west end came the Polytechnic School with its splendid band, and the pupils of the primary school also marched down. From the east came the pupils of the high school, from the south came the members of the SATC and college students, while from the north came the employees of the aluminum company with their band. A parade was formed at the corner of College and Main Streets, headed by the aluminum band, Red Cross ladies in uniform, followed by the college organization. The schools followed, the aluminum company people brought up the rear. All along the line, marchers carried appropriate banners. Cheering, auto horns, church bells, and factory whistles added to the din of noise. It was one of the most cosmopolitan parades ever seen in Maryville, and by far the largest. After marching out West Main Street, the paraders doubled back and assembled in front of the post office, where a mass meeting was held. The band leading and Reverend E.W. Hall directing the vast audience sang the doxology. The volume of sound or song indicated that the gathered crowd wholeheartedly praised God, from whom all blessings flow. And so there were a series of speakers, including Reverend Emmert and Mr. Moore, R.R. Kramer presided, Reverend Buckner spoke. Dr. Wilson was the last speaker. And as Grace MacArthur recalled, continues in a recollection from Dean Stone's article, Dr. Samuel Tyndale Wilson, 5th president of Maryville College, was also arriving. Trumpets sounded, a salute to the flag. He stood on the top step, tall, impressive, and he spoke. First he said that the war was over. Some men would not be coming back. Later I knew 42 from Blount County were lost. The names of Milton Harper, Tom Goddard, Cecil Goddard, Emerson Lonis, Luke Lawson, and Carlos Warren must have been mentioned, for they were known to have been killed. Anyone hearing him that day could not forget the joy in his voice as he said Blount County's sons, except for those, would soon be home. He must have given names: Tom Calloway, Beecher Mize, and his own son, Howard Wilson. Only later did families in our community know of the price our veterans paid. And so often is true. It is much later that we come to understand that the price our veterans have paid when they served in the military. And I think often the best way that we can honor them is by seeking to understand that price and by listening to their stories. And as many of you know, there have been a number of wonderful projects in our community to preserve the stories of veterans. And among these is one that is led by our writer-in-residence here at the library, Jim Stovall. He is working along with Ed Caudill and Billy Minzer to collect the stories of Vietnam veterans here in Blount County. And they have published 2 volumes, which include these stories. They're preserving an archive of the stories. And on Veterans Day at 7 p.m., they are also hosting a program which will include some audio of these stories and discussion among the Vietnam veterans. We hope you will come and attend that program. There's information on how to access it on our Facebook page. They welcome you to join them, whether you are a veteran or not. You are most welcome to come. We hope you will attend that program and hear these very important stories from our veterans. Thank you again so much for joining us today. And we especially want to thank our veterans for your service and your sacrifice. Whether it's in a street name or an audio recording or the loved one sitting next to us at the dinner table, your stories are